because you've done powerlifting and you've done Olympic lifting, and there's some crossover there where there's some great athletes that have done both and done a great job at both. And there's even some guys that have done strongman, Olympic lifting, and powerlifting.
Yeah, I would say
like Mark Henry.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mark Henry may be the strongest drug-free athlete of all time.
900-pound deadlift.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he was like 20 years old or something.
Yeah, and he didn't train a lot. That was the thing. He trained for like a year for weightlifting. Like maybe he didn't train like for 10 years doing those things. It's a tough question, right? We talk about this like Lasha, right? Everyone knows Lasha is best in the world in weightlifting. I don't think he's the strongest weightlifter that's ever lived. Like he's the best weightlifter. His numbers, like when you add up his technical skill, his athleticism, and his ability to do weightlifting, all of those things, or his strength, all those things make the best weightlifter in the world, right? He lifts the most weight, but he's not going to be as strong a squatter or in static lifts like squat and deadlift as some other guys, right? There's for sure dudes that have just been like not as good a weightlifter but stronger. Like Lasha's not squatting 400 kilos. Maybe he could, but there's probably guys out there that are doing that, some other lifter. And then same, so he wouldn't be the strongest. He's the best lifter. Then you have guys like Misha, right? Kokliev, who's like, everything he did, he was great at, but he wasn't necessarily the best in any one of those. I mean, he's the only guy that I can think of that snatched 210 kilos and had a 900 deadlift, right? Maybe some other guy out there could. Maybe Lasha could train and get to a 900 deadlift. But that's a remarkable feat.
Yeah, and he was a hell of a strongman competitor.
Yeah.
I mean, he might be the strongest guy ever.
Yeah. And it's also funny
he
too.
Play the guitar and he could sing.
Yeah.
He might be the cutest.
Yeah.
He had an amazing personality. He was so funny.
He was really
so much
cool.
fun.
Yeah. He was great. He was just like one of those guys, like when you watch him, there's a lot of great lifters out there that are super boring. And you're like, dude, that's like the greatest powerlifter in the world. But like that person has I don't watch that and feel inspired to be like that. But then you get guys like Misha or,
Ilya,
like some of these guys who are just like, holy shit, like I want to be like that dude. I want to that guy is amazing. And what he's doing makes me want to be a part of the sport. They may not even be the best. Like a guy like Klokov, right? Klokov's like one of those guys that he could pull people into the sport. Yeah. He's like charismatic and exciting and it's fun. He's doing stuff and it's just like, this guy's a stud. This is super cool. Whereas there's other guys, and it's like, there's no personality, there's nothing. They're incredible athletes, but it's kind of, you're like, that's awesome.
Why do you think that happens a lot in Olympic lifting?
I think you have to be a little more extrovert, right, in weightlifting. I think those kind of people are going to be a little bit more at the top, like a little bit more extrovert, a little bit more like
cerebral, maybe.
Yeah, there's a more like action happening, so you can be excited about it. In powerlifting, it's there, but it's so calculated, and a lot of people in powerlifting, it seems very methodical, and like it's so just like focused on like maximizing this thing where it's like we just become the absolute best, and what can we millimeter can we shave off here and change our technique here and do this. Weightlifting's a little bit more like there's a little more chance to it. A little bit more of like if you kind of, I say wing it, but like sometimes you do. Sometimes there's like, you're out there and like guys just fucking go for it and make some lift that is just crazy. They're just walking all over the platform or stumbling or fighting. And it's just, there's athleticism to it that I think makes it something that you can get excited about.
Now, Mark, were you asking about why it is that they're cerebral and more mellow, or the opposite?
Just why is it so fucking quiet?
Yeah.
When you go to
I
like
think
Olympic
you were
lifting,
answering the opposite.
and everyone looks like a nerd.
So,
yes. Yes.
Is it because of the drug testing?
I would say it's different. In being at these international meets and being at some meets, we were at a meet, the first meet that Lasha snatched 220 kilos, 484 pounds. There was 2 Iranian super heavyweights going up against him, and the Iranian, Anaheim. The Iranian fans were in the audience. It was insane. The like, what's the little like horn they have?
Oh yeah,
the vuvuzela or whatever.
Yep.
They were going so fucking hard on like trying to get everyone to fuck up. I mean, it was like, imagine like you're at a golf match, you're
crazy.
Watching someone play golf, like everyone quiets down when someone's putting. Imagine everybody in the audience is fucking screaming profanities in another language at this person. And it was like crazy to the point that like one of these guys goes out. So the Iranians are going out, they're getting cheered on, quiet when they lift. Georgian guy comes out, Lash comes out, and they're just going nuts. And they're screaming, trying to get him to miss. This other guy comes out like I want to say he was from like Estonia or something. And they kind of threw him off and he missed. And so the audience is like, the Iranian sector of the audience is loving this. And then the entire rest of the audience is all like probably American. Kind of get into this zone of like, fuck this. We're not going to let these guys like screw this guy up again. So everyone in the American side of the audience starts to drown them out by cheering for this dude. It was this awesome moment of like, they got him to miss his first lift, and then everybody on it stands on their feet, starts screaming and cheering for this guy to make his lift, and he does. And it was just like this moment where you're like, yeah, we did that. We helped this guy, you know, and we didn't, but we never, you know, I can believe that.
Power Project family, how's it going? I want to talk to you guys about Within You Supplements, which is developed by Mark Bell. The cool thing about Within You is that it's not a crazy supplement line which has a crazy amount of unnecessary supplements. They stick to what is necessary. Whey protein, electrolytes, and the electrolytes are dope because they have amino acids and they have zinc. Then there's fasting gum. So we talk a lot about intermittent fasting on the podcast, and this fasting gum has apigenin, rutin, and caffeine, which can actually help you prolong a fast. It's really freaking cool. It was developed by Mark and Joel Green, who we've had on the podcast multiple times. So you guys got to check it out. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at markbellslingshot.com. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off your entire order. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
Remember when the Iranians pulled out their flags? Because like everybody else had a flag.
It was like a 20 foot by 20 foot flag.
It was just like, you know, it just took up the entire bleachers and this flag came down. It was pretty intense. So once every 50 competitions, there's an
a good
exciting one.
Well, there are a lot of weightlifting competitions, but they're not, I was talking to Josh, they're not going to be in the next Olympics, right?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet?
They're in this Olympics, but it's tentative after that because there's been so much scandal. So the IWF had a president for, I don't know, like 30 or 40 years, the same dude. And he obviously just get elected because what they would do is every country gets to have a delegate. And even if they have no lifters, so that every federation does. So what you do is you're like, oh, you're the president. You need all these votes to win. So like you go to these 15 different African countries with a guy who's just like, you know, well, I'm the president of the Congo Weightlifting Federation, which has like nobody. And they fly him out to, you know, wherever, Zurich, and they're like, hey, you know, here's a week vacation, you know, let's hope you vote for me. And they would just buy votes and just like basically everything was controlled that way. So he was around forever. But him getting booted out and all the drug positives and stuff coming out really just like put everything into this big upheaval where the Olympics are basically like, you gotta prove to us by December of this year, like probably the next couple of weeks, like if you guys are actually going to make changes to test people at a competition.
And does that come down to each country to test the athletes that they're planning on sending to the Olympics and giving them tests back?
Well, there's an international body called WADA that does the testing. And so like North Korea just retired all their athletes and pulled out of weightlifting basically. And we think it's because there's a new rule in place that states that if drug testers can't get into your country, you're out. And so that was like a strategy for a lot of these countries. They just wouldn't let the drug testers through visa checking at the airport. So yeah, I mean, there's a move to that. It's like if they have to basically have WADA coming in and doing unannounced testing. So they show up whenever they feel like, and they do a drug test on you at 4 a.m. or something.
You know, Mark mentioned that there's a lot of Olympic lifters that choose to do CrossFit, and there seems to be a lot of it seems to be if you're a good CrossFitter, you can really build something with that. Now, as an Olympic lifter, it's still a huge sport, but do you see athletes transferring into other things because of where the sport's going, or is it still big enough and the future looks bright enough where athletes are sticking to the sport?
That's a good question. Like, I feel like what we see now is like people become a personality. And so like if you can just become a personality online, you know, and you have like you're like a, you know, not to knock anybody, but like there's lifters that are just like, they were like C-session lifters, you know, not the top person, but they capitalize on it to become a personality. They get sponsorships, they get put into videos, and maybe they have a YouTube channel, right? And they just become a personality that does that. And that escalates them up the ladder. And then you just kind of like, it feels to me like a lot of the way this stuff goes for most people is to like just become, an icon that then you can sell products. You know, if you have a huge following, you can sell stuff. You can parlay that into a business. Some people have, for sure. There's definitely lifters that have done well with that. As far as lifters that like stick into the sport and stay a long time and support themselves through sponsorships, I don't think there's a lot. You know, your stipend from the U.S. government is going to be, maybe you're making $80,000 a year as a lifter, which is really good if you're like the top one or two. But then your sponsorships are where you'd make money. And a lot of these people are getting sponsorships that are probably pretty poor, you know, maybe $1,000 a month or something. So I don't think people are really like sticking into it as for a long term.
But there are a lot of CrossFit athletes that have switched to weightlifting, and I mean that's what popularized Olympic lifting in the U.S. I mean, when I started in 2004, and I would go to a meet in the Bay Area, there would be 3 to 6 women competing.
Mm-hmm.
Now every local competition we go to is usually more women than men, and they're almost every meet's like sold out. How many lifters were at Yasha's?
Yeah, it was like maybe 100 almost.
Like 100 lifters in one day, 60% women. So that's been because that was actually why I met Max, because there was nowhere to find platforms and bumpers back then. So I had to drive from Oakland out to San Ramon to find somewhere to train.
Peeps, we love bringing you all this fitness information, and we also want to help bring that information to more people. So if you could help us out, hit that subscribe button and then hit the notification bell, and we'll continue to bring you the heat. And I won't whisper in your ear. Talk to you guys later.